be left unsupervised.
That's right. This happened last week. Steph and I were unsupervised, and then this week Steph's not here, and we so totally rely on Steph to start this podcast.
Yeah, like, there was once upon a time where there was, like, there was many hundreds of episodes ago a structure of how this show began, and somewhere along the way it became, Steph will say some bullshit. That'll be fine. We can rely on Steph to pull something out of the ether. And now we show up and we're like, I've shown up all business. I'm here in my suit, ready to be like, we got work to do. Where's the silliness impeding me? I need some resistance to work against.
254 episodes. I know no other way. It's always been madness off the jump, as far as I can recall. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's back in the before times. There was like, we were video games right from moment one was kind of almost a thing briefly, and then. No, you've got to fight for your video games here.
Well, we don't have to fight for our video games here, and you were at Gamescom last week, which is why you weren't here.
I saw too many video games. No one should see that many video games.
I have no interest whatsoever in ever attending a show of that ilk. Ever again. No need.
It paid well, but it is... There is a very specific energy that if you've, like, for anyone that's covered, like, a Gamescom or an E3, it's that specific vibe of go for an appointment to see a game, and now you have, like, 45 minutes between appointments that you need to find somewhere to sit down with your laptop, have an opinion about that game, get it sent off to someone else, and find your next thing. And it's like several days back to back of, I've seen a thing, opinion, go, run, and another thing, another opinion. My brain is soup. There's too many video games in my head.
See, you said something back there, and it made me reevaluate my position a little bit, because you said you were paid well.
Yeah.
Oh, now you see, that's the thing I was doing wrong all of those times.
No, trust me. As someone that covered Gamescom and E3 in years past, in a salaried position that wasn't the best paid in the world and wasn't being paid anything extra to be at those shows, where it's like, no, you're not getting anything extra for the hell you're going through. It makes a huge difference when you can go, each individual piece I'm doing is financially, like, worthwhile for the time I'm spending. It's like, I'm doing work and getting money for it. Gorgeous. Beautiful.
Wow. Your labor is being rewarded with income. Interesting.
I love it when the skill I have spent years developing is recognized as labor worthy of recompense through finance.
Well, Laura, why don't you tell us about some of these games you saw at Gamescom?
Yeah, I should probably do that. You know what, I'm going to start by talking about the one that I sent you a message about separately before we recorded this week, because this is the game that, like, of everything I saw at Gamescom, this was, like, the surprise I saw that I was like, this is genuinely interesting and I have to, like, tell everyone about it. Like, anyone who I'm talking to Gamescom about, this is the thing that I have an urge to tell them about. It is a game called All Will Rise. And I warn you in advance, it's fucking impossible to find any mention of this game on the internet at this point. I have told the devs, have some kind of page I can point people to. But it's got some people that you might know of that are connected to it. Most notably, it's being written by Meg Gianth, who did the writing for 80 Days, Boyfriend Dungeon, Thirsty Suitors pretty recently. Very, very talented game writer in terms of writing, like, femme, queer, lefty indie game narratives, and very rock-solid track record, and everything I've seen in this has sort of convinced me that will continue here. All Will Rise is a deck-building card game / Phoenix Wright courtroom drama about a bunch of lefty political activists in India that accidentally managed to argue for legal personhood of a river, meaning that, like, any harm or damage done to this river would be legally equivalent to harm to a person, and have to scramble to go, okay, didn't expect to actually get a fucking win. How do we capitalize on this? How do we move forward, in that way that sometimes lefty organizing can be a bit of a scramble? And this legal precedent that they have set is very quickly put to the test when a couple of days later, the main character wakes up to see this river dumped full of toxic chemicals and set on fire.
That's not good. That's a bad thing.
No, it's a bad thing. And, you know, there are some obvious suspects you could maybe point to. You could go, like, is this a act of pushback against the precedent that has been set? You could look at some of the obvious, there are some polluting companies in the area that you could maybe point to. But your job is to very suddenly have to organize your little group of leftists to investigate what went down with the crime and find clues, do deck-building card game battles to have arguments and legal cases with people, all while managing, like, the level of burnout of your individual, like, volunteer activists, and managing the differing personalities and the tasks they might be better suited for as parts of a group that clearly have the same end goal in mind, but have very different ideas about what is acceptable ways to achieve social change. It is a fascinating game.
I love this so much because so many, I don't even want to say lefty games. Lefty games fall victim to this as well, but any game that it's like, oh, we're going to have a revolution, and you have the revolution at the end of the game, but you never see how that revolution works, right?
Yes.
You never have to deal with the problems associated with, like, building a society and establishing rules and procedures and coming to compromise and agreements. If anybody needs that message, if anybody needs the hope that those things can be managed, it's leftists.
Yeah.
Because, god damn, they will eat themselves very quickly given the opportunity, and they're people don't realize. And then the burnout thing, that just hits so hard. Like, I produce a show about leftist activists, and whenever we talk to one of them, every single time we talk with an activist, the subject of burnout comes up.
Yeah.
Having that as a central mechanic, I think, is really, really helpful and valuable.
Yeah, so, like, the things that I think this game is doing narratively and mechanically that, like, really stood out to me was really focusing on, I think, this idea of a group of people who come together idealistically with the aim of getting something done can sometimes end up finding themselves, either through a success or a happenstance happening, having more eyes on them and what they're doing than they expected. And that can very quickly sort of change the dynamics of how a group of largely cobbled-together volunteers approaches the kind of task they're doing. The main character you're playing as is the only member of your group of activists who is in a position to be able to do this full-time. All of the other people involved are, at best, part-time volunteers helping out with this, and one of the mechanics about this is the investigation segment, and the way that works is, on any given in-game day, you have a little counter that's like, this is how much time this character has available today to help out with this, and this is how long each of these tasks will take to do, but also how much political energy it is going to take out of them, how much closer to burnout it's going to take. And maybe you can really manage that time very well to squeeze in getting a few things done by a single person today, but they might be a little closer to burnout as a result. How much do you do that sort of short-term sprint versus long-term sacrifice a bit of, they could have maybe got more done today, but they're going to be more use to you long-term. You have to think about things like, is one of your activists maybe more okay with political violence than another, and choices you make might embolden one of those characters but make another one of them a little less energized because they don't like the approach you've taken in a narrative choice. Who do you send to go do certain tasks? There are risk levels associated with who you send to do what tasks in investigation. Let's say the task is like, go talk to the local elderly community who might have seen something. Of your options of who to send, you might have like minuscule, low, medium, or high risk if you send a character that is more naturally inclined to maybe say something that's going to piss off some old people. All of these little things you have to think about micromanaging in who is the right person in a volunteer collective to put on certain tasks. And all of that is like a lot more nuance about handling volunteer political activism than I see a lot of stories that try and tackle the topic be willing to dig around in. And I haven't even talked about the deck building mechanic of this. The way that you get new cards for deck building is as a result of narrative choices. One that I can remember off the top of my head is, upon first seeing this river on fire, you have a couple of choices, and one of them is like, do you entertain in your mind the idea of, I'm pissed off, I'm frustrated, I just want to go spray paint some slogans on a government building or something. Something that's going to make me feel better in this moment about a thing I can't really do anything about. And by doing that, I got a card that, I forget the exact name of it, but it was something like Fleeting Joy. And it was this card that was very specifically like, yeah, you felt better in the moment, but like, it's not actually helping, is it? The cards you get to add into your deck as options are very deliberately reflective of the narrative choices that lead you to them, and I like that a lot. The card game aspect of it is pretty simple. If you're having a debate with a character, be it a courtroom argument or just trying to shake someone down for information, each of your cards will generate and reduce certain stats in different ways, and will cost a certain amount of your political energy to play in a turn. You can get a bit of that energy back by colour matching the last card that was played, but generally speaking, you have a very limited number of card plays from your hand, and you're just trying to have more of a certain stat than the other person when both of you have run out of energy to play more cards. It is not a particularly complicated system, but throughout those sort of card game debates, you will be earning new cards. You'll be having conversations mid-card battle. Those narrative conversations will unlock new cards, so even if you lose an argument and don't get the information you wanted to get out of them, you'll end up with new cards to have a stronger deck to go back and try again another time. And that whole system, it's not overcomplicated, it's largely there to be a mechanism for, have you found arguments that are strong and persuasive enough that your deck of rhetoric is going to get through to someone? I am fascinated by this game. There is an hour-long demo. I did not play the full hour just because I was seeing this in between appointments and was like, I need to give this some time. But I've insisted to the devs of this. I'm like, you need to get something online for people to look at for this game, and please send me the demo because I want to stream it because I think this game's real interesting. One little side note of a nice little fact about it. 5 years ago, I was a judge for a university game jam in the Netherlands. All the game jam entries had to be to do with sustainability and environmentalism. And the person who ran that game jam is the person who is making this game. And I was like, cool, I'm really glad to see that game design university lecturer who is very eager to get people thinking about how environmentalism can be incorporated into game mechanics has made a really fucking cool thing along those themes.
Yeah, that's great. You'll have to see it. I'm very keen on this. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'll have to check that out.
I believe they're looking for a publisher at the moment, but I'm like, get a website up for this game, get that demo out there, you've got something really cool I think people will get on board with, so...
Definitely, yeah.
What about you, Conrad? What have you been playing this week?
I played Crypt Custodian, which released this week, and it's a Metroidvania that is very forgiving in a lot of ways that I really appreciate. It's presented from a top-down Zelda-like perspective, and you are a cat who has recently died and gone to the afterlife. And you are judged, and despite the fact that you were a very good cat in life, you are found wanting and exiled outside of the palace in the afterlife and condemned to be a janitor for eternity.
Oh no.
Yeah, and this sort of expands out as you are introduced to other damned spirits that live there, that maybe something hinky is going on with this process, and you start to make friends to possibly address an unfairness amongst the people being condemned. So your main weapon's a broom, you hit stuff with it, there are weird little creepy demon enemies, it's a neat art style. It feels very Cult of the Lamb-ish, that, gives a vibe as to the visuals that you can expect. But the characters are all very cute, and the scenarios that they're in are sweet, and they are, for being damned spirits, pretty positive on the whole. Generally upbeat, if, sometimes very strong personalities. And they, it's charming is the word I keep coming back to on it. The writing in it is it's just fun, and it's about making these friends, and they're all a little different, and they're all a little strange, but you get along with everyone. In terms of its Metroidvania mechanics, you start with a jump that allows you to clear some small gaps. You'll extend that later with an air dash. You have a basic ground dash to avoid some attacks. You later get a charge attack that throws your broom like a broomerang, allowing you to hit some distant objects. And, so these techniques are deployed both as combat mechanics and as puzzle solving. And there's some neat environmental items that you can engage with for travel. There are these bubbles that if you dash into them, they'll increase your momentum forward further and carry you across gaps. That took a little bit of adjusting to, but it's very fun to do when you get it right. Another interesting power you get is the ability to spawn another one of you that has more limited functionality to move around some areas. They can cross some blocks that you can't on your own. They can be used as a weight in pressure plate puzzles. So they find a fair bit of versatility for all of the abilities that you unlock over the course of it. I'm about halfway through, I would guess, at this point, and enjoying it. The map is, like a lot of these Metroidvania games, you think you have a sense of the scale, and then as you keep playing and you keep seeing that map expand, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, this place is huge. But it does have a lot of very friendly design for the player. Lots of paths that circle back, that open up easier routes so you don't have to do complicated navigation a second time. You can, at any point in time, warp to the most recent shrine or any shrine that you reach, which, functions as save points with no penalty whatsoever. So it's easy to hop around the map, which is good because there's often a lot of distance between areas that you're going to need to access when you get a new ability. But it's not so bad to sort of look at the map and say, oh, here are where there are gaps in the map. I'll just pop over and see if this is the one that addresses. If I were smart, I would be using I think they allow up to 50 icons on the map that you can place. And there's a bunch of different styles, so you can, indicate things that you've seen. I keep forgetting to do that. It doesn't help that I didn't realize I could until I'd been playing for several hours and passed a bunch of that stuff by. But it at least made the effort to put that there, and if I had only used it, it would have been easier. But that's okay. On the whole, the game's a lot of fun. I've put a good 6 or so hours into it on release day, streamed it, had that much fun with it that I stuck with it through the day. So I will probably finish it. I do think it's worth taking a look. I think they have a demo on Steam that you can play.
I believe so. I saw they had a demo on Switch. I've literally just purchased the game while you were talking about it because it looks and sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's real good. It's real good. I'm very happy with it. So, yeah, I would take a look at that demo. It's worth a play.
Well, that all sounds really good.
Oh, hello. Hello.
Steph's here.
Hello.
Hello.
Got a few moments to spare.
Oh, lovely. So glad you could join us.
Yeah, I'm on a trip to Birmingham today. Birmingham, but I've got a few moments to drop in. So, yes, that's what I have done.
You got a game about a cat you want to tell us about?
Gori, Cuddly, Carnage. Oh my god. Right?
It's so good.
I dropped in while you were talking about gameplay and demos and buying things on the Switch.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was about. I have decided it is about Gori, Cuddly, Carnage because everything is about Gori, Cuddly, Carnage. Everything. The fiscal year is about Gori, right? Liz Truss's budget that crashed the pound like a little bit back, that was about Gori, Cuddly, Carnage. Ponds, the concept of ponds. A little fish in them.
I'm so glad that this game has come together, because I saw a demo for this at I think it might have been EGX, I'm going to say like 5 years ago, and the idea seemed interesting, but it was just a little too ropey to click. And I am glad that seems to have come together, because I fucking love the idea of this game. This game is fucking bonkers.
I went in with very tempered expectations. The premise and the images I looked at was like, are they trying to do an edgy sort of mascot horror thing? It just looks like maybe it's trying a bit too hard. The thing is, right, it is edgy. It's not mascot horror, but it is edgy. And it is trying too hard. And that's what's so fucking good about it. This is the most 2000 shit I've played since the actual 2000s. I've been describing it as Fur Fighters meet Metal Arm's glitch in the system by way of Dynasty Warriors and a psychedelic fucking nightmare. You are a cat on a sentient hovering skateboard that also is a big choppy blade that you can spin around to slice killer unicorns to death. It's got the kind of ridiculous premise and over-the-top gore, but it's okay gore because they're toys. And that's the kind of thing they would get away with in the 2000s, like with Metal Arms. Except because it isn't the 2000s, the unicorns also bleed and are full of guts. Although they are animatronics, wink wink. It's, oh my god. It is such a mess, but really like the best kind of mess where anyone watching won't know what the fuck's going on, and you almost don't know yourself.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter, because all you need to know is, well, I say all you need to know is you glide around slashing unicorns. There is also surprising little twists in the combat.
There's a lot of depth in it.
There is, yeah. You've got some enemies in plastic round bubbles, like bubble boys, and you need to hit a different attack button, which is a giant sort of big pink cat head on a stick. You need the smashy attack to smash those open. And then you use the slicey attack to cut up the slicey unicorns. Then you've got unicorns that shoot with their gun arms, and you can bring up a shield to reflect those back. Then there are like skills and stuff to upgrade and all of that, all of that good shit. Stuff I just did not expect when I went in. When I saw the listing on the Switch store page, and I'm like, this looks like it's probably part of the whole shovelware shit. And just immediately playing it. The cutscene was promising because it was, again, it felt so try-hard edgy, but once you get what they're doing, it works so well. And then the moment I cut my first unicorn up, and I was like, not only is this not shovelware, for what it is surprisingly not janky either. No. It's a little bit loose.
It's a little loose, but that's something else that works in its favor, because there is so much happening on the screen at any given time that having that little bit of wiggle, that little bit of forgiveness, and it invariably seems to be in the favor of the player.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It all works together, and it feels empowering, even if you're not 100% sure how you executed anything. And then eventually, as you start to play it a little more and you get a handle on it, you can actually perform really precise action with it.
Oh, yeah.
Which I found surprising.
It's like, what if Devil May Cry or God of War was a complete fucking mess, but it still worked? It is just a gorgeously scrambled, verging on character action. That kind of stylistic sort of thing. You've even got like a rating system for combat. And not that you pay much attention to it because it's just colours on top of the colours.
Well, and it has those great throwback sequences where, they're introducing the enemy and it's got some stupid phrase associated with it that all sort of evokes that kind of era. I have a real love-hate relationship with the visuals because I fucking hate them. They're hideous. They are hideous, but the combined level and consistency of just like unattractiveness in all of these designs comes together to a cohesion I didn't expect.
And that just what the conceptually what you said there is part of this game's brilliance, because So many aspects of it could be described like that. Here is a thing it does that's bad, but here's why it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a perfect place to be. Briefly returning to the loose controls, one of the things about it that really shows the consideration they've had while making this is the fact that with a game that feels this loose, with combat that is that sort of messy in a good way, you would expect the fact that you are also having to do parkour type stuff, environmental navigation with the skateboard. That should be a complete fucking disaster. You're doing wall running, you're doing grinding, and here's the genius. The game is so sort of like loose and a bit sloppy that trying to manually get on a grind rail is next to impossible. And a bad game would just be like, good luck with that. This one, so long as you get close enough and then tap a button, the cat will magnetize to it. And if you're near a wall run thing, if you're not going to make it in time, the dodge will latch towards it. And those are the little details that games can miss. They want a game that does so many different things, but they never quite get 100% with it. And this game actually thought, like, what little things do we need to stop this being too frustrating? And that's where this game shines through. It could be so similar to so much sloppy shovelware or games that had big ideas and just didn't fucking have the time or the budget or the consideration. There are many games just thrown together, and this could have easily been that, but it's the little things they thought about. What would a player like? What would make this an easier time for them? What would make it fun? It's such an obvious thing, but I do think sometimes game developers don't sit down and think, is what we're doing fun, or are we just doing it to do it because it's been done that way? This one has clearly thought, like, what will be a fucking laugh? And yeah, the turnaround I had from hearing about it to playing it, it took a minute. It took the first time I carved into a little group of unicorns, and it felt really good and responsive and was visually disastrous, again in a good way, while also just being so hilariously fucking gory. I was immediately like, yep, I have played PS2 games. I get this. You know me, I'm so fucking jaded that I really try not to get, hyped or anything, and I try not to get excited for a game before it's out. Having played the demo, I have borderline evangelized it. I can't wait till tomorrow. At the time of talking, it's out tomorrow. I can't fucking wait.
Yeah, it's out as of the time people are hearing this.
Yeah, I've got it pre-ordered.
Jesus.
There's no bonus for doing that. Part of it is I am going to be out of town and I have very limited access to internet and everything, and fiddling with purchases probably going to be a hassle. But the other part is there was no reason not to. I was on the storefront. I was going to buy it anyway. There's no question that I'm buying it. My God, it's the perfect kind of game for me. Hack and slash bullshit with ridiculous gore, trippy visuals, and again, I keep saying this 2000s vibe. It is a perfect shitstorm. I'm so into it.
I am equally interested and will almost certainly be picking it up tomorrow also. It's wild fun.
Yeah. I'm so glad you like it.
Yeah, that demo, everybody should at least try that. If you are into hacky slashy stuff at all, it is fantastically fun. Yeah.
I am sad that I didn't know that at Gamescom the devs were giving out cat ears. Like Gori's ears.
Oh.
I am sorry, I'd gotten home by the time I knew.
Yeah. Like, it was on me for not trying the game sooner and then seeing the ears. Would have loved them. I'm not going to be so gauche to beg the devs for them. They're very excited that I'm very excited, but I'm not going to exploit that. If they overhear on, videos or podcasts that I would like one, then that's on my head, be it, if they choose to put it there. So that's on them. But, I'm very pleased that they're excited. Apparently, one of the people working on it was a big fan and is excited that I'm excited. So that's been nice. For all the people that say I enjoy writing negative reviews, don't worry, I played Concord as well. I much prefer when I'm able to really be positive about a game and then the dev feels really positive about it. There Still Wakes the Deep was a similar thing when I gave, that massively glowing review. And so many people on the dev team were talking about it on social media, really happy about it. I much prefer making people happy than making people sad.
There's a certain satisfaction that comes from eviscerating a very bad product, right?
There is a venting process to it sometimes.
Yes,
yeah.
But it doesn't feel good. Like, satisfaction isn't the same as feeling good. If you have an itch and you scratch it, you're satisfied by having scratched the itch. But your life is not actually improved, nor has anyone else's. You've merely dealt with a thing that sucked.
Yeah. And it's never nice to think about people putting in a lot of work into a game and then, I swan along and I'm like, it's fucking shit.
Yep.
I much prefer it the other way around. I much prefer people who have done good work to have their day made,
Yep.
And Gori, Cuddly, Carnage is going to make my fucking day tomorrow. I've never been so confident based off a demo that was a game made for me. Not literally, that would be strange, but definitely as a Metal Arms player, there's another one as well. Fur Fight. Some people have also mentioned like Conker's Bad Fur Day as well, stuff like that. Again, a bad thing that's a good thing. It's dated in the best way.
Mm-hmm.
So up for it.
Nice. I'm glad you're getting to be excited about a game. You deserve to be excited about a game.
I missed that feeling.
Yeah.
Are you going to stick around for a few more minutes? Because I do have another game that I could talk about, but you both have to be here.
Right. Yep, I should have time for that.
Okay.
Cool, I don't have to wait a week to find out more about this thing. Oh, thank God.
All right, so here's the deal. My wife's family came for a visit, and they like to bring little gifts when they do that. It's very sweet. And they brought a card game called Butts in Space.
Butts in Space, you say?
Butts in Space.
And,
right.
And Linda and I played it, and it's a very good little card game. You have 4 butts. They're characters. You have Beau Butt, Hairy Butt, Classy Butt, and Butt Butt are the 4 butts.
Right.
And they are arranged around the table, and you have a hand of cards that are toilet papers that are associated with each of these types of butts. And so you can lay down sets of toilet paper that match the butt that's in front of you at the time. And as the play progresses, the butts will get shuffled around the table in order for you to get access to different butts to play different sets, and the player who has the most sets at the end of the game wins. It's a very simple card game that anyone can pick up. It's a lot of fun. Lynn and I played it a couple of times. It's a really great little card game that I have enjoyed a lot. And then I was looking at the box for it, and the box had a URL. I think the card game came out in 2019, but the URL was buttsinspacetheapp.com. And I'm like, the app? What is the app? And this wound me up. I found the company that makes this card game previously made this as an app game that is Butts in Space, and it is an asteroid clone. It's an asteroids clone.
Right.
Yeah.
With a sort of a slingshot control method where you swipe opposite the direction you want them to launch in.
Oh my God. They've got little arms and legs.
They have a trailer for this.
Conrad sent me this and was like, Laura, I'll send it to you on the condition that you're not allowed to go look up anything else until we can show it to Steph. And I had to see these little butts with arms and legs drawn in MS Paint and resist the allure to find out more.
Right. I recommend we splice in some of this trailer song at this point because people need to hear this.
1 butt, 2 butt, 3 butt, 4 butt, 4 butt, hairy butt, classy butt, butts everywhere, butts in space, butts everywhere, what a disgrace.
It's on the level of when Jonathan made me a little YouTube intro audio years ago that was just him singing the word butts over and over again.
Oh my god, this is very much like a Jonathan Holmes song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, this Asteroids game, the rewards for playing well in the Asteroids game, Butts in Space, is that you get toilet paper.
Yeah. By the way, not to cut in again, but looking at the trailer, just over the halfway mark, they've got butts wearing red dresses so that the cheeks look like tits.
Yeah, they do.
I don't like how much like mine they look.
Yeah, that's Boob Butt. Boob Butt is a distraction in the card game.
I don't like boob butt because it means I have butt boobs.
Yeah, you play Boob Butt on a player and they have to skip their next turn.
Right.
Yeah. All of the assets, that's what I find so amazing about this. All of the assets in this game, all the little collectible toilet papers that you collect for playing well, they just made them into cards. They made a ton of art for this little phone game that's, if I'm honest, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
But they took
That
all
is
the assets
amazing.
and made an actually pretty solid card game out of it.
I like to imagine that they made the app and they saw what you saw and they're like, the app's fine, but there is no fucking way I'm not doing these butts justice. There is no way we're letting go of this.
These butts have to exist in some kind of tangible form. We need something that lets you handle and physically hold these butts. I guess it's got to be a card game.
They love these butts, as do I.
I mean, they're endearing.
They're incredibly endearing.
Hairy butt is majestic.
And I just love that they took all of the stuff that they'd made for this other game, and then upon, they wanted to expand it, and they found another product that they could reuse everything. It's very efficient. And then I kept looking. And they've made a bunch of card games by this point. And they have a memory game. Again, it's just the toilet papers. But of course, why wouldn't you? That makes so much sense. You have all of this art.
Yeah, such memorable designs.
Yeah, they're brilliant. And then I learned through further research they currently have another Butts in Space game in development.
Yes, the one on Steam, the platformer Flappy Bird looking thing.
Yep.
Pixel art butt.
Yep. There's an early access version on Google Play Store. I didn't check Steam.
Can I just say, I'm looking at the trailer on Steam. It's got an almost like Tomba element to the way you sort of throw your character like butt forward.
Yep.
Mechanically, I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing there. You've got some mechanics.
Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by the Dusty Top Hat, which is the company that put this together. And it is a fucking crime that only 18,000 views of this trailer exist for Butts in Space.
Sorry, I have to read to you the mature content description on Steam. Mature content description. The developer describes the content like this. Main character is a butt. That's it. Main character's a butt. You should be careful.
That's it.
Perfect.
So, yeah. Butts in Space is... the card game is actually really fun. I would recommend people check it out. It's, I think, very cheap. But the app version of the game is free on mobile, and that's just if for no other reason, then you can have Butts in Space on your device. Yeah, it's kind of charming. Yeah,
they also have one called Couch Skeletons.
Yeah, that one looks interesting. I'm thinking about picking that up.
Yeah, that looks very cute.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm glad I was around for that.
Yeah, me too. Laura, do you have more Gamescom?
I do. Is this a good point for us to let Steph escape before I just start barreling through video game after video game?
Yeah, I should probably squirt off. I could talk about Concord, but like my review's up on the Jimquisition.com. It is not a good game. It feels so focus tested, mundane hero shooter that I am phenomenally bad at. That's not, I couldn't really use that to criticize the game. That's not their fault. But I'm pretty good at online shooters. Not great, but I am a good hand. And I have never failed to gel with a first-person shooter like I have with this. Yeah, it's so derivative, but it tries not to be by making their mechanics slightly eccentric, but they just made it worse on purpose. Real shame. It is already dead on arrival, so I do feel like I'm kicking a corpse. That's it. That is it for me, because, like I said, I got to shoot off. It's been lovely to drop in, though, and hear about Butts in Space.
Lovely to have you. Have a good day. I'm gonna rattle through so many video games so fast. There's so many of them. Right. Where do I even start with Gamescom stuff? So many of these I can get out the way, like, real fucking quickly, because so many of these are sequel, where my entire opinion is, that sure is like the first game, but with, like, one change. I played the opening half hour of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, and my takeaway from that is, that sure is a game that wants to kill you with very little warning, and then just, when you reload, rather than, like, teach you the things to look out for that are going to kill you, the game really seems built around, what if you just got killed by a thing you didn't know to expect, reloaded back in, and had to be cautious for, like, 15 seconds to work out what the fuck happened? The game really, really revels in wanting you dead. It is a very pretty-looking shooter. Not for me as a person who is not skilled at games that are constantly trying to murder you. Path of Exile 2? For anyone who didn't play the first Path of Exile, imagine what if World of Warcraft was a single-player RPG rather than an MMO. My big takeaway from playing like half an hour of this was the witch class is pretty fucking cool. My understanding is the demo was like the opening half hour of the game. Within half an hour, my witch had a build that allowed me to have a little skeleton army, which is pretty fucking cool. I found a wand where I have 2 little skeletons constantly there to come fight with me, and if they ever die on a cooldown, they'll just revive themselves automatically. And then I got a spell that makes big spikes of bone come out the ground, and if those get the killing blow on any enemies, those enemies will then turn into skeleton scorpions that'll help me fight for a bit. So it was just run up to a group of enemies, regular attack, as soon as they're all pretty low, bam, wipe the whole thing out with a couple of area of effect spike attacks. Now I've got a little scorpion skeleton army, sprint to the next encounter and just let my skeletons run free. That was pretty cool. Some nice quality of life changes compared to the first game, mainly orbs no longer have to be equipped to armor, they can just be equipped to your character, which is so much less faff for swapping equipment, like, midway through a mission. Nice sort of quality of life stuff, like you complete a mission, there's just a fucking portal to take you back to the quest giver. It seems like a good game if you're in the mood for, I want the mechanics of an MMO, but without having to people. I got to play some of Date Everything, the game that Steph did writing for, the dating sim where everything in a house is a dateable object. And my experience with that boils down to, I got to date 3 things in my time with the demo. I ran to the bathroom and dated the toilet first, because of course I did, I needed to know. The toilet is a shitty SoundCloud rapper. The most insufferable, nothing of value person I found in that house to date, and I think that is the correct way to characterize a toilet. Then I accidentally started dating the user interface for the game. I started dating Textbox Chan, the living text box, and...
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so funny.
The thing about that is that she very quickly implied that any time I've been clicking on the UI when, like, dating other characters...
Oh, no.
I've been clicking on her, obviously, because she's the text boxes. She's been getting turned on by it. So, no matter who I date in this game now, I have the knowledge living in my head that I am physically interacting with Textbox Chan, whether I intend to be or not. That's just the relationship we have. And then I tried dating a door, and the door might be the best bit of characterization of, like, what an object would be as a person that I saw, which was, the door was a bouncer. Big rectangular man who determines whether you can enter or exit places. Perfect. That's exactly who a door should be.
Yeah, they have really personified that.
Everything I investigated and messed around with, It reminded me of how I felt working on things I learned from Mario's Butt, in that it's very clear that despite this being a silly, ridiculous idea, someone working on it went, yeah, but I'm gonna take this so fucking seriously that, like, people will have to admit that I put some work in and came up with some clever thoughts while doing this stupid bullshit. And I saw something that I recognized in work I've done in the past and went, oh, this game's gonna be for me. I very much love clicking on things and going, oh, you sat for a while and worked out, like, exactly what kind of person this inanimate object would be. Didn't get to spend a huge amount of time with it, but it was enough to get me very, very sold on the idea.
That sounds great.
Yeah. An interesting one from a very small team that I think is worth keeping an eye on is a game called Immortal. I originally looked at this game because it had a very visually interesting art style. I saw some GIFs of it on social media. Lots of very dramatic high contrast colours paired with... I initially thought they were going for like a stop motion animation style, but what they're doing is just very dramatic held frames on impact to sort of really emphasize impact frames. And that gives this sort of side-scrolling beat-em-up combat game a very instantly catching visual style. What's kind of more interesting is the gameplay mechanic they've got going on. Your character has 2 combat styles. I don't remember the actual names for them. I'm going to call them light and dark. You can press a button to switch between them mid-combo, so you can be doing a light combo and then mid-combo switch to a dark combo, and they've got different moves. But you've constantly got this bar at the bottom of the screen that's measuring how far you're leaning one way or the other with your balance of using those combat systems. And if either direction the bar like reaches the end, like you've used dramatically more of one combat style than the other, a risk-reward system activates, where you can kill any enemy on screen with a single hit. You just walk up to them, press a single button, you do a big, dramatic, flashy murder animation, and it's really cool. But if you take a single bit of damage during this state, you lose that combat style for a brief period of time. So, like, let's say this risk-reward mode lasts like 20 seconds, you kill a shit ton of enemies, but right near the end you take a bit of damage. You just don't have, let's say, dark combat mode for a bit of time. There's no health system in this game. The way that health is determined is you can lose one of your combat systems and, fight with the other one until that first one sort of automatically comes back on a timer. If you lose both of them at once, that's what causes you to get a game over, as if you'd run out of health. So as long as you play cautiously and carefully, like, any time that you're down to a single combat system, you, in theory, like, shouldn't die. And that's, like, a really interesting idea that I think has a lot of legs. I think there is something really unique to it that felt really fun. There's something rewarding about the idea of deliberately mashing one combat style to get this big burst of damage from all these one-hit kills, knowing that you're sort of risking getting yourself 50% of the way to being knocked out.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's from a tiny little 2-person Estonian development team, and I think they got something pretty interesting on their hands. I'll do one more before I throw back to you. Let's do Project Timmy, Sasha's Curse. Did you ever play Captain Toad Treasure Tracker?
I played, like, the demo, I think, and always been interested, but I also know that it has, like, a short runtime.
Yeah, for anyone who's not played it, like, the gist was, you've got these little diorama-style environments, you're playing as a character that can't jump, rotate these little dioramas around and, like, work out how to explore them and find little collectibles hidden around them. Project Timmy, Sasha's Curse, is off-brand, legally distinct Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker.
We have Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker at home.
Yeah, and they have at least one mechanic of their own to sort of set themselves apart, and that mechanic is sometimes levels will have enemies, and you do have a way of fighting them. Enemies will move in time with the music, like on the beat, in a set pattern across a stage. They'll move back and forth in like a fixed pattern. You can press a button to set a trap on a square that you know an enemy's going to walk onto, and then press a button in time with the beat when the monster steps onto the trapped square to do some magic, defeat the monster. Other than that, it's just Captain Toad. It is 100% Captain Toad's little physical diorama. You've got all your little secret objectives to do in your level, find all the little hidden things and work out how to manipulate your way around these little toy box environments. It's adorable, it plays really nicely. It's Captain Toad for people who want more Captain Toad but maybe don't own a Nintendo system that Captain Toad is on. Did you play anything else this week, Conrad, before I continue rattling through things?
No, I'm done. I've played what I played. So
cool. I will try not to be too much longer. I've got a couple of things I want to quickly go through. I played some Civ 7. It plays like Civ. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. The main thing that's interesting is that the game's clearly built around giving you points to course correct what kind of victory condition you're going for a couple of times throughout your playthrough. At the end of each age, you have the option to control a different civilization, and the way that that's sort of narratively justified is you, as a ruler, are ruling an empire, and you basically have options to switch your focus to a different place within your empire that's maybe more aligned with the victory condition you're going to be going for in a later age. It's neat that you don't have to pair leaders with the civilizations they're supposed to be with anymore. You can sort of mix and match them, which does some interesting stuff. I like that there is, at the start of each age, you are asked by an advisor, what kind of victory condition do you think you're aiming for this age? And you will get, quests and bonuses to help you along that path. But that transition between ages will be hey, you got your rewards for, working towards a victory condition path. If you're feeling like you want to swap which direction you're going, now's your best chance, and it will give you a bit of breathing room to course correct, and that's interesting. I'm curious how it'll play out in practice. Monster Hunter Wilds. It plays like Monster Hunter. There's one new mechanic that's kind of interesting. When you attack monsters, they now sometimes get red glowing points on them that are, particularly damaged wounds. You can now hold down L2 to aim a first-person reticle at those points to focus your attacks on that point. And if you hit that same point over and over, you'll, burst the wound and do a big burst of damage. It's a nice little thing to layer on top of a combat system that I don't think anyone had any major complaints with. It's a new thing on top of, don't break what isn't broken. I think I'll leave some of these for next week. I can leave some of these for next week. I think the last thing I want to talk about is I got to play around with some accessibility controller stuff at Gamescom, and most notably, I came home with a new accessibility controller that I have thoughts and opinions about. So, the Proteus controller is an accessibility controller for PC and Xbox that is made of a bunch of cubes that you can assemble together in any orientation, and all of the buttons and analog sticks and things are circles that sort of magnet into place and then clip onto a face on the cube.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is a very customizable controller, and I cannot deny, build quality-wise, it is very impressive how, easily it all goes together. It feels really sturdy when put together, no matter how you've sort of assembled it. I'm very impressed at the way that they make a series of cubes come together and feel like one solid object. The sheer amount of versatility in terms of, do you want to arrange this so it's a one-handed controller with all of your inputs on one hand? Do you want to make it a regular Xbox controller but just more small and condensed together? Do you want to make it into, almost a keyboard setup where all of your buttons are on the top of something that one hand can be pressing? It is really, really versatile in terms of how you can set it up.
It's fascinating, and it reminds me of, and this is going to sound weird, but it kind of reminds me of construction set toys for kids, right? In its modular fashion and the magnets, everything sticking together and the infinite variations.
I don't think that's a bad comparison to make, in that when I went to the Proteus booth at Gamescom, it was 50% people with disabilities coming to go, I'm really curious what this could do for my setup, and 50% families with young kids where the kids saw a bunch of cubes on a table and wanted to mess around putting them together. Mm-hmm. And there is something very immediately tactile and inviting about the way this customizable controller is, that it's oh yeah, it's not a scary thing to start fucking around with.
This is appealing to me as a person who does not have any sort of disabilities that, prevent me from playing games, apart from age.
Well, we will talk about the thing that I think might be the thing that puts you off in a minute. But,
okay. All right. Well, it's appealing. I am the guy who is eternally miffed that the PlayStation Move's secondary controller has not been better utilized as a control scheme for things like JRPGs and stuff like that. So, and I look at this and that's what I see. I see that opportunity. But
yes.
Please,
I'll rip. Look, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off now, and the thing that like is the big thing to say about this controller up front is the price. This controller is $300.
I mean, yeah, that does not surprise me, frankly.
No, it's not surprising, but like it is expensive even for an accessibility controller. Like, if you compare this to, say, the Xbox Adaptive Controller, the PlayStation Access Controller, the Hori Flex, like, previously the Hori Flex was the most expensive, entry point at £180. This is, like, a noticeable step up from that.
The obvious issue there, first of all, is, it's a luxury price for something that, is being target marketed towards people who already are at an economic disadvantage in many cases due to their disability.
Yeah.
So, that sucks. I don't know how you get around that, though, under the system of capitalism that we have, where supply and demand and all of that, it just sucks.
And I will say this, at $300, my feelings on the price on this is, it is expensive, it is prohibitive, it is not an easy recommend to someone.
Yeah.
But I can say that at the same time as going, it does feel like a real premium. Like, as someone who has one and is not thinking about, like, the price factor now that it's in my hands, it feels premium, it feels like it is doing things that no other controller is doing, and I can see so many use cases for it.
Right.
The one quibble I have on price, and the one thing that has made me go, I do wonder how much the markup on this is. I've got to do a little bit of a wander to get to this point. So, one of the things I really wanted to be able to do with this controller is, I've been looking for a solution for ages on either Xbox or PlayStation to be able to play games with my hands separated apart from each other, with the Joy-Con on Switch.
Yes.
That is just a lot more comfortable for me to not have to have my hands in front of me in a fixed position. And I was hopeful that would be possible out the box with this, because the setup contains 2 power cubes, which are the ones that, like, power the controller and communicate with the console. So I was like, cool, there's 2 of those little power transmitter ones. I'll put half my inputs on one, half my inputs on the other, use co-pilot mode to make them one controller at the other end. That'll be great. That's not currently doable, because the thing ships with a USB dongle that only supports connecting to 1 power cube at a time. They are selling pre-orders for a second USB dongle, for $30 for a USB dongle.
Oh, okay, alright.
And when I hear that, I'm like, look, I don't know your financials, but I feel like you're pretty fucking... Like, my gut says you're pretty fucking upcharging that additional dongle. And that does make me go, is there more of an overhead on the Proteus than I was giving them credit for? Is there room that price could have come down that isn't, because, capitalism gonna capitalism? The other thing I feel like I want to say about on the price element is, I have this today because I went to the Gamescom booth for this mainly because I just wanted to try it out and have some initial impressions. And someone on the booth was like, "Hey, we've got some dev kits here that we are happy to sell if you want to, like, walk away with one today." And I was like, "Is there anything different between the retail unit and this?" And I was told, "Nope. The only difference is a couple of the components are 3D printed rather than finalized prints, so, like, the locking components might be a little bit stiffer, but, like, it's the same thing." So I paid full retail price for one of these, only to discover in the 24 hours later there is a series of bugs unique to the dev kits that was not disclosed, that were not disclosed to me prior to purchase. It's one of those things where, to not disclose known issues, non-final version of hardware that you're still going to charge full retail price for, and not disclose, it left me on a bad note. It felt like a bit of a chancing a sale, while knowing there were problems and still going, we're still going to charge the price of the not buggy version that's shipping in the coming months.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if you hadn't asked. Yeah,
I gave an opportunity for, are there things I should know about, and was not made aware of, like, oh yeah, one of the power cubes won't power on if it's connected to an analog stick, so you've got to disconnect the analog stick, power it on, then connect the analog stick. And I'm like, that's stuff that, like, at $300 I would really hope you would just admit up front.
Yeah.
Because, like, we're in premium controller territory. Things like this feel worse when you have paid that much for a thing. And again, I've been assured that when the retail units ship out over the next couple of months, those issues do not exist. And I, don't want to be too harsh on, that kind of problem, because that will not affect the average person who picks one of these up. And I don't want to end on, a negative note on this, because I feel like it's important to talk about, some of the concerns I have around it. The way I ultimately feel about it is I fucking love this controller, though.
Yeah.
I fucking love this controller. And any complaints I have about it really pale in comparison to the fact that the way I've been using it at the moment, because I can't currently use it as a split-handed controller, is I've been using it as a controller with 45-degree bends inserted into it, so that, my hands are tilted slightly in and the back of my hands slightly up, and it's just made my grip on the controller much more comfortable than it usually would be. I've also moved my triggers and bumpers onto the back of the controller rather than the top, just because I grip my controllers in an awkward way and I find that an easier place to press them. I did not realise how much of a difference that would make to me feeling comfortable with a controller. This is going to be my default Xbox controller going forward. I fucking love it. And for any problems I have, I see the magic that this thing presents in terms of customizability. And specifically, I keep thinking about, if you're a dev that's doing demo booths at conventions and wants something small and easily customizable you can have, that's not going to take up a lot of suitcase space, but will support a lot of different disabled gamers who might come past your booth, this thing is wonderful. I like a lot of the little touches, if you want to make changes to it while it's connected to the console while you're playing, if you just disconnect or connect a part while playing, the LEDs on it will start glowing in rainbow colours, and all of your inputs will be temporarily disabled, so that you're not accidentally doing inputs while trying to take things apart and put things together. So you're not accidentally pressing buttons during that process, and then you give it 2 or 3 seconds, light goes solid. It's yeah, we've recognised the thing you connected. You don't have to go into software to tell it what you connected or how you oriented it. The thing just knows. And I'm so much of this is so user-friendly. So much of this is such a big positive boon for the accessibility space. I just wish the price were easier to recommend. And I hope that something can be done to get that down. If nothing else, I'm glad that charities exist that will put work into helping make these affordable for people. There are charities like Special Fete I do not doubt will financially cover getting these to people who need them. But yeah, it's a fascinating little controller that I have not had as much time with yet as I would like, but I am going to have thoughts about this over the coming weeks.
When I think about what I would spend for an Xbox Elite controller and a higher-end PlayStation 5 controller, the versatility that this offers actually does make it seem like a pretty good value.
If I could find a way to get this to work on PlayStation as well as Xbox, if I can find some adapter that'll trick it into working, that would really help the price proposition on this.
Yeah.
If I could have this be the one controller I use on console, it would be a lot easier to justify where the price point is.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully they can work out the licensing and get that on there, because that would be a game changer. I think it sounds very intriguing. I love how versatile it appears to be, and it sounds like the build quality is really good. And that, I am not above paying a premium price for a premium product.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that people who will be benefiting from this, from a disability perspective, will have some options to get that subsidized. But the price should come down.
I'm lucky I'm in a position where I could sort of impulsively purchase one of these at Gamescom. I know that is not everyone's position, and I can't ignore that price in talking about where this sits in the space of accessibility controllers, but I do fucking love it, though.
Yeah.
We got time to talk about a couple of bits of news before we finish up?
Yes, let's do that.
So, on the topic of accessibility, there is an article that is important to talk about that went up on IGN this week. A very in-depth piece of journalism. It was written by Grant Stoner. Absolutely fantastic work on this. The piece is called "A Prominent Accessibility Advocate Worked with Studios and Inspired Change, but She Never Actually Existed." The piece is lengthy, but I will summarize it as best I can. There is a person called Cody Craven who is probably best known for founding Can I Play That, one of the big websites out there over the last few years for journalism covering video game accessibility. And over the course of several years, they faked several identities seemingly for personal gain, particularly pretending to be women of colour, usually black women, with disabilities that they did not themselves have, usually pretending to be deaf, using being deaf as a cover to not do video calls with people that consulting work was done with, and to give a sense for anyone outside of this community of how big of a thing this was. One of those identities that was created, Susan Banks, the reason that Can I Play That exists is because Cody Craven crowdfunded on the back of Susan Banks' supposed death to fund creating Can I Play That.
Ooh.
For several years, one of the big awards that exists in the gaming accessibility journalism space was the Susan Banks Advocacy Award, named after a person who never existed but was nonetheless memorialized. They created identities that they used for seemingly getting grant funding that was supposed to be for non-white people in the gaming accessibility journalism space, because it is a pretty white-dominated space. Basically, speaking over marginalized sub-communities who were already struggling to get a seat at the table talking in activism spaces. It's a really fucking heavy read, particularly for any of us that interacted with any of the non-existent identities in question. It's been a weird year for the accessibility in games space. We're a small community. 2 notable deaths, not that long ago, and then shortly later finding out, that person you thought you knew never existed in the first place. It has been a blow to the community.
I feel like there has to be a better way to be a scammer, too.
Yeah.
That seems like a tremendous amount of work to create and maintain a whole bunch of identities to do this. Setting aside how just, fundamentally wrong it is to take advantage of and speak over people in marginalized communities so that you could personally profit. It's disgusting in its own. It just, go be a right-wing grifter. There's way easier ways to get people to give you money. It's fucking gross.
So, I wanted to bring this story up for a couple of reasons. One, I did want to clarify something I've seen be a misunderstanding some people have had. Some people have seen this story and have asked me, do I need to stop reading Can I Play That, or do I need to be looking for alternative places to get accessibility news from? Cody Craven has not written for or been a part of Can I Play That in several years. The other big project that they were involved in was the video game triggers database for potential PTSD triggers in video games. They are not in any way involved in that at this point, and it is at this point completely unconnected, was being worked on by unpaid volunteers. You don't need to avoid either of those resources in order to not be supporting this person's work. But yeah, it is a very well-researched piece of journalism from Grant Stoner that is worth reading. I cannot imagine the work that had to go into questioning whether a person we all knew might not actually exist and doing the follow-through to investigate that. So yeah, that is a thing I would recommend reading, but it's a lot. We got one other thing. Comparatively, I'm going to say it's less heavy. It's at least not surprising. Raven Software, the one of the studios that works on Call of Duty, is alleging that Microsoft and Activision have been doing some bad faith bargaining with their union.
That doesn't sound like Microsoft and Activision.
What? Yeah. So, the unionized staff at Raven Software complained to the National Labour Relations Board, alleging refusal to bargain / bad faith bargaining. Which, what? A corporation refusing to negotiate in good faith with a union? Oh, I'm so surprised. The complaint doesn't go into details, but it does include changes in terms and conditions of employment, as well as concerted activities, retaliation, discharge, or discipline. A Microsoft spokesperson told GameFile the company is committed to negotiating in good faith. The thing that they're alleged to not be doing. So, not much more to it right now, other than, hey, just because a union formed and is under Microsoft who said they would respect unions, doesn't mean the fight for the unions is over. Keep respecting your unions.
Yep. And speaking of respecting your unions, shout out to the workers at Spiders who are expected to be going on strike next week over issues relating to management and so forth. They did another strike back in January over remote work. They've been in negotiations in the time since. It's not been going great, and they're going to be striking next week. So solidarity with our friends over there, and good luck in getting what you need.
Good luck indeed. Yeah, should we leave it there for this week?
I think that's where we leave it. But Laura, you'll never leave us, really.
Oh, I'll never leave you. Never.
There will always be more Laura out there. Maybe you can tell people where to find it.
Oh, well, funnily enough, you can find it at Laura K. Buzz pretty much everywhere on the internet. I've got that good unified branding. Things I've got going up this week. There is a new episode of Control Alt Access that'll be up the same day as this episode. Myself and Arevia talk about a bunch of stuff out of Gamescom, including the new Xbox Adaptive Joystick, the motion simulator that one of the booths had that had support for wheelchair users that was really interesting. A bunch of cool stuff out of Gamescom. Friday, you can check out a lengthy, in-depth opinions piece about the Proteus controller. I've got a 20-plus minute video, really going into depth on my thoughts on that controller, if you want a bit more of that. Other than that, just Laura K. Buzz, you'll find me everywhere. What about you, Conrad? Where are you at on the internet?
Oh, you can find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Instagram and Blue Sky, and you can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda and Jimquisition merchandise at mercenarycreative.com, and everything that I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And Laura, did you know who else has a Patreon?
Oh, I've got some guesses.
Yeah, it's Stephanie Sterling.
That was at least my second ranked guess.
Patreon.com/Jimquisition. That supports the Jimquisition videos, that supports this show, the reviews that are written at thejimquisition.com, where you can find the reviews. Concord review is up there now. Also, Steph would very much like to remind people that she's going to be in Leeds on September 20th, True Grit Wrestling. So go check that out if you're in the area. She's going to be wrestling Priscilla, Queen of the Ring. It's going to be a brutal match, so I'm told.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure to check that out. She's also streaming sporadically at twitch.tv/Jim Sterling, but who knows when that would be, and because they are quite clearly in Birmingham. And I think that's it, right? Are we done? Did we
I think
it?
so. I think we're done.
Yay. Well,
Yay.
We'll see you all next week then. Everybody should be back. Bye.
Bye.